Good evening. Is that better? Thank you. Welcome to the Staten Island public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2016 New York City water rate. My name is Eric Landau, and I will serve as this evening's hearing officer. I'd like to take just a minute to give a brief overview of the evening's process. I'd first like to note that we place certain documents into the official record, including the notice designating me as the hearing officer, a copy of the public notice listing this hearing, and an affidavit of publication of such notice, a draft of the proposed water and wastewater rate schedule, the public information booklet regarding water and sewer rates, a copy of which is available outside at the check-in table, and also all written statements submitted to the water board. These items are marked exhibits 1 through 5. I'm going to introduce the members of the New York City Water Board. We will hear a presentation from DEP Commissioner Emily Lloyd on the water rate proposal, and then we'll open up the meeting to the floor in order to hear from all of you, the members of the public. If you've not yet signed up to speak or wish to do so, please take time during the presentation or do so now. There are sign-up sheets at the front table outside where you walked in. Please note that you can also submit written testimony to the New York City Water Board from today up until the close of business on Friday, May 1st. These statements will be entered into the record, and copies will be distributed to the Water Board members prior to their adoption of a rate schedule for FY16. I'd like to introduce the individuals joining me up here. First, our acting Water Board Chair, Arlene Shaw. Water Board members Joe Finnerty, Adam Freed, and Jonathan Golden. New York City Water Board Executive Director Steve Lotz, and New York City Water Board Treasurer Mathilde McLean. Ms. Shaw, do you have anything to add before we begin?
I'd like to thank you, Eric, for hosting tonight's hearing, and I'd like to thank you and the audience for coming out and sharing your thoughts with us. Our chairman, Alfonso Carney, would normally make opening comments. However, he couldn't be here tonight, so he's asked me to say a few words on his behalf. The New York City water and wastewater system and its operations are pretty great. And each of us on the board appreciate the role that we play in protecting that service that we provide to the residents of New York and the residents of upstate New York. We're glad for you to have come out tonight to learn more about the water system, the water rate proposal, and also to share your thoughts with us on how you feel about the water system and the water rate proposal. Your questions and comments are important to us. We consider them. We think about them before we all vote. We're all given ample time to digest the information prior to us voting. Shortly, I'll turn the floor over to Commissioner Lloyd to make the presentation, and then you'll be given an opportunity to speak with us. And if you have any questions, the Commissioner and Steve Lloyd will do their best to answer your questions. Also, for your information, this is the first borough hearing of 5 borough hearings. We do 1 in each borough, so we're in Staten Island tonight, Brooklyn tomorrow, Bronx the following day, Queens, and then we round it off in Manhattan on Friday. One last comment, we have several new members to the Water Board that I'd like to introduce to you. Alfonso Carney has been named our chair for this coming season. We also have 2 new members, Joseph Finley and Juan Davis, who's joined us at the end. So we'd like to welcome both of them, and we'd like to turn it over so we can get the presentation and then hear from you, the public. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. The Water Board would now like to welcome Emily Lloyd, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, to give the presentation. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the Water Board, and thank all of you for coming out tonight. Can you hear me in the back? If at some point you can't hear me, somebody will just raise a hand. I'll try to make sure I'm speaking into the microphone. Thank you for coming out, and we'd like to use this as an opportunity to give you a bit of an annual report on the operation of the water and wastewater system, and then to walk through the components of what goes into building the rate each year and how we've arrived at this year's rate before we open it up to your comments. So the proposed rate increase for fiscal year 16 is a 3.24% rate increase, which is the lowest rate in 10 years. That will convert into, for an average single-family home an increase of about $33 a year, and it would be an increase of $22 or $31 for multifamily, either the meter charge or the multifamily conservation program per residential unit. The 3.24% increase is 34% lower than what we had projected the rate increase would be for this year when we projected it a year ago, and that is because of low interest rates, which reduced projected debt service by $195 million, a strong fiscal year in terms of revenues, positive financial results overall, including a one-time $83 million payment with ExxonMobil for a settlement, and operational cost savings. We try to always stay focused on balancing the need to make investments in the water and wastewater system and to operate it according to all of the regulations and to help keep the rate as low as possible. This year, once again, we have pushed the rate below the national average. It generally has been at about that and then a little bit above in the past couple of years, and now it's dropped below again compared to water rates across the country. And showing that against other typical costs that people have in New York City, it is significantly lower than the cost of gasoline, heating oil, natural gas, electricity, and of course the cost of housing, which we think is an indicator. We hope it reflects our efforts to keep it as low as possible. Just to give a snapshot of what's been going on across the country, water and wastewater costs have been going up over the past 20 years. This is really driven by the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. These were landmark pieces of legislation in the 1970s that have been rolled out as mandates requiring water and wastewater utilities to make very significant capital investments and also to operate their facilities in ways that meet very high regulatory standards, which can be very expensive. So you'll see across the country, rates have been going up similar to the way they've been going up in New York. The national average for 30 large cities is 6.3%. We're a little above that at 6.8%. And again, showing the New York City rate as part of the national average against the other 30 other large cities. It's the green line there in the middle. Our mission, of course, which seems to be my missing page, there we go, is to protect the public health and the environment by supplying clean drinking water, collecting and treating wastewater, reducing air noise and hazardous materials pollution. But the water rate pays for the supplying drinking water, collecting and treating wastewater, and managing stormwater. We serve over 9 million people daily. We try to operate a safe, high-performing water utility at the lowest possible cost and to build our capital projects on time and on budget. Now, what do we do every day, just to give you an overview? So, DEP delivers 1.1 billion gallons of water a day to 9 million plus customers. That's all the residents of New York City and another about 1 million customers upstate. We manage many of the uses, including septic systems and wastewater treatment plants in 2,000 square miles upstate to keep the water clean. We maintain dams, aqueducts, shafts, the water mains, 110,000 fire hydrants, and we perform 550,000 water quality tests per year on the drinking water. On the wastewater side, we treat about 1.2 billion gallons of wastewater each day, and we operate and maintain 14 wastewater treatment plants. I'm sure you're familiar with the 2 on Staten Island, 96 pumping stations, and 7,400 miles of sewers. And we also manage stormwater. That's all the rainwater that falls, which is, of course, on average increasing through green infrastructure, through 148,000 catch basins, many storm sewers, 4 major combined sewer overflow tanks, and the blue belts, primarily on Staten Island. When we think of customer service, first and foremost, we think of providing you with clean drinking water when you get up in the morning and turn on the tap. But of course, it also means interfacing with 836,000 ratepayers who have accounts with us. And over the past 10 years or so, we've been doing things to try to make that work better. We've installed automated meter reading, which has reduced estimated bills by 81%, and billing disputes by 56%. We have 230,000 customers enrolled in the leak notification program, which means that if you have a leak, we will let you know about it so you can fix it quickly. We also last year expanded the leak forgiveness program so that more fixtures are now covered. If you fix a leak and bring it back to us, you will get a credit. And we have 177,000 customers enrolled in the service line protection program. I hope all of you have looked at that and considered it, because one of the unexpected expenses that property owners encounter sometimes is the failure of the service line, the water service line or the sewer service line, for which the property owner is responsible. People typically never think about this. They last for decades. They may last for over 100 years without having any problem, but when they fail, they can be very expensive to repair. So this service line protection program offers a buffer against that. Customer service also means, of course, fixing things when they fail, as pieces of infrastructure inevitably do sometimes. And so compared to this time last year, we have resolved catch basin complaints 21% faster, repaired or replaced hydrants 22% faster, and had 37 fewer complaints about leaks on private infrastructure, which we think is largely because of the service line protection program, that property owners now have someone to call when a service line goes, rather than calling us and asking us what to do, so they get faster service. We also continue to benefit from the recurring savings and revenues from a program we've had going for about 5 years called Operating Excellence, looking at ways we can cut our costs through renegotiated chemical and service contracts. We've realized substantial savings, and also through reduced chemical use. We have energy savings from wastewater process improvements, and we've reduced other costs as well, for an overall savings of about $45.4 million a year recurring. We've also strategically replaced large meters in big buildings, bringing in an additional $52.8 million in annual revenue that will continue. Just to look at some of the big capital projects that we've been engaged in over the past few years. A big one is the Croton filtration plant. The water from east of Hudson, which is anywhere from 10 to 30% of our drinking water, has to be filtered to come into compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. That's been an enormous undertaking for the past 10 years, and it will open mid-month in May of 2015, coming online. An associated piece of that was rehabilitation of the new Croton Aqueduct, which is also being completed now. And another big project was the Gilboa Dam reconstruction. About 10 years ago, we became aware, actually it was right after Katrina, that the Gilboa Dam in upstate New York probably could not have withstood that storm. And we started recalculating what the storm of record, the storm we should build to, should be, working with the State Department of Environmental Conservation, and started making both emergency repairs and a major reconstruction of that dam, which has now been completed 2 years ahead of schedule. Had we not had those emergency repairs in place, we think that dam might not have withstood Irene a couple of years ago. Just to touch on some of our capital priorities for 2015 to 2025. We expect our capital budget to be $15.5 billion, and some of the major pieces of that, the biggest one is building a bypass tunnel. There's a large section of the Delaware Aqueduct that has been leaking for decades, and we have been concerned, very concerned, that we might have a collapse. So we are building a bypass tunnel. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. We are investing heavily in green infrastructure, intercepting stormwater right after it leaves the sky before it gets into the sewers and becomes either a combined sewer overflow or perhaps a flooded street is a much more cost-effective way to proceed than gray infrastructure. You know that because of the blue belts, which are really a larger version of some of the smaller green infrastructure we're doing now. So we are investing heavily in that because we think it's very cost-effective. We are investing in energy and energy efficiency projects, many of those at our wastewater treatment plants, which use a lot of energy. The Kensico Eastview Tunnel is a missing piece of infrastructure. Once we opened the UV plant, which treats the water from west of the Hudson to, again, come into compliance with Safe Drinking Water Act requirements, we were not able to use one of the 2 tunnels coming from Kensico Reservoir, and we think it's very important that we always have 2 tunnels, so if there's a catastrophic failure of one for some reason, we can still get the water to the city. So we are now rebuilding a parallel tunnel, so we will again have 2 pieces of infrastructure there. And I mentioned the upstate dam reconstruction after Gilboa Dam. The next dams that we're strengthening are the Ashokan Reservoir, which is part of the Catskill system. And then another big piece of our capital program is building out storm sewers in Southeast Queens. Like Staten Island, a lot of Southeast Queens was built out without full storm sewers. It didn't matter when there was a lot of green every place, but as it's gotten more and more built up, there have been more and more flooding problems, and we have a long way to go on that infrastructure. So we have a significant amount of money in for that. And last, I'll mention the filtration avoidance determination. West of Hudson, 70 to 90% of our water we do not have to filter because it is so clean. We're one of only 5 cities in the country that can serve water without filtering it. It saves a lot of energy, it saves a lot of money for the operating of the system. And so we are trying to continue doing that, but to do that, we have to carry out certain things we've committed to upstate, certain investments, and we're overseen by the State Department of Health and the EPA. So we have money in the budget for that.
Excuse me, what about collecting money from deadbeats? Maybe we wouldn't have to raise our rates if you did that. Would you talk about that?
Sir, the public will have an opportunity to speak when the commissioner is finished.
Well, I don't believe in a dictatorship. I don't like to get dictated to by you raising my rates when you don't collect money from other people.
Sir, we would be more than happy to hear your comments once the commissioner has finished her presentation. Thank you.
To mention a couple of projects on Staten Island, the Blue Belt expansion I know is of interest to a lot of people on Staten Island, and we are expanding both in South Richmond and the Mid-Island areas. That's in the capital plan for the next 10 years, as well as very significant upgrades to the Oakwood Beach wastewater treatment plant and Hannah Street pump station. I mentioned the bypass tunnel. This just gives you a graphic of that to give you a sense for the scale of it. It's the tunnel as it goes under the Hudson River, and it involves building shafts and then building the bypass tunnel, and then towards the end of this decade we will be doing a switchover. Because when we switch over, we will have to turn off the Delaware water, which is about 50% of our water, for several months. There are some other projects that go along with this, including cleaning the Catskill Aqueduct to increase its capacity, and a very aggressive water conservation program to reduce water consumption in the city by 5%. Another big piece of the capital program for the next 10 years are the long-term control plans, which are required by the Department of Environmental Conservation to reduce combined sewer overflows into the surrounding waters. In the areas that have combined sewers, when there's too much storm water and the plant can't handle it, the plant throttles down, and the excess stormwater, with about 10% of the sewage mixed into it, flows into the surrounding waters. And we are required to continually reduce that amount of overflow. So we have $1.3 billion in the capital budget, which is, again, a mandate, but one that is really good for New York City because it's cleaning up the surrounding waters. And whether you are in a part of the city that has beaches or that uses the waterways for, like Flushing Bay, for other uses, this is an important investment. Everyone's aware, of course, especially in Staten Island since Sandy, how important it is to plan around resiliency. A lot of the things I've talked about are an important part of that, the green infrastructure, the zero energy consumption of the wastewater treatment plants, but also having them be self-reliant, running the plants off their own methane, so if there's a loss of power, we can still operate them. And we've also set new design standards for our wastewater treatment plants to move the electrical systems and other things up higher so they can continue to operate even when there is a storm surge. I mentioned green infrastructure and how important that's becoming as part of our stormwater management. We have an ongoing rollout of thousands of right-of-way bioswales. These look like very big tree pits planted very lushly. They soak up a lot of water and they retain it underground. We're also investing in putting stormwater management under all the parks being done as part of the Community Parks Initiative. We are converting school playgrounds so that they do stormwater retention underground. You'll see a before and after picture up there of a playground next to a school. That one happens to be in Brooklyn, but we are doing them all over the city. And we are increasingly focused on getting private owners to do stormwater management on site through a series of grants to get them to pilot those. When we talk about the cost of operating the water and wastewater system, we always talk a lot about paying our debt service, so we thought it would be a good idea to just talk a little bit about our debt. When the DEP financial structure was created in 1985, we took on a small amount of debt from the city, but obviously we've been making these very big investments ever since. So from 1985 until 2014, we've committed almost $40 billion to capital projects. 42% of that, or $16.7 billion, were for drinking water purposes, watershed protection, tunnels, mains, some of the stuff I've already mentioned. 58% are for clean water purposes. That's sewers, wastewater treatment upgrades, blue belts. And almost half the projects were required by federal and state mandates. Just to break that down a little bit, the mandated projects are on the right, and the other projects that we do because we think they're important for the operations of the system are on the left. So on the right, they're ones that are familiar, even if you've just been here tonight, because we talk about them all the time. The Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant, the largest at $5 million. The Croton filtration plant I just mentioned, Catdale ultraviolet treatment. The wastewater upgrades for bionutrient removal. This is what, you'll remember the city that had to shut down their water system because of algae in the Great Lake. This is meant to keep that from happening in the waters around New York City. But on the other side, on the left-hand side, we wanted to show you some of the big projects that we've been investing in, and by far the largest has been at the bottom on the left, building out our sewers. That's 14% of the investments that we've made. The second being wastewater state of good repair. Our 14 wastewater treatment plants are getting old now. They're 30, 40, 50 years old. They need new equipment, new digesters, and they're very expensive to invest in. And then going on up, a lot of our investment has been in water mains throughout the city. You probably hear about aging infrastructure. An enormous quantity of water mains in New York City are more than 100 years old. I see water main breaks every day. I get every report of the water main breaks. And very frequently it'll be 1886. I always get the date of when the water main was put in. They're not those old wooden ones, but they're pretty old. Interestingly, at least to me, is that we have one of the lowest rates of water main breaks in the country. It always seems to me like we have so many, and we do, over 600 a year, but it's one of the lowest, and that's because we, in fact, have been investing heavily in replacing these very old water mains. We have a very long way to go, but we've been investing a lot in it. Another is what we call water conveyance and dependability. That's the aqueducts and water tunnel 3, which is the tunnel that we're just completing now through the Bronx and Manhattan and Brooklyn, Queens, and it will feed Staten Island as well. That's so we can shut down water tunnel 1 for the first time since 1917 and repair it. It's been a continuous service since 1917, and we know it needs to be repaired, and we're very worried about its reliability. So Water Tunnel 3, which has been under construction for 50 years, is just being completed and coming online to allow us to do that over the next few years. And then another big one is dams. As I mentioned, all the dams upstate all need work. It's required by the Department of Environmental Conservation, but it's required just to keep the reservoirs intact and not lose their capacity. I may need help. There we go. So this gives you a sense. It is something we watch very carefully, that our debt has been increasing over the past few years. It has been increasing steadily, and we have been doing a lot of things to try to reduce it. One of the things we do is to pay for some of the work as we go. We pay the full cost, even though we might be able to borrow for it. When we borrow for a project, as a rule of thumb, we pay something like $5 million a year for every $100 million in investment. It's like having a mortgage, and we pay it back over 30 years because the infrastructure lasts for that long. In fact, generally it lasts for 50 years, 100 years. So it's a good investment. But it does mean that the debt accumulates, and that worries us. So increasingly, we're looking at whether we can pay for some things as we go along. Obviously, with something like the Newtown wastewater treatment plant, if we had paid for that out of pocket, the water rate probably would have tripled that year. That we just couldn't do. We had to spread over time. But some smaller things, we're looking to see if we can pay as we go along. The other thing that we're trying to do always through the Water Finance Authority is buy back the more expensive debt from the years when debt was more expensive, 5, 6, 7, 8%, and buying back and trading it in for debt that we pay maybe 2 or 3% on. So that's kept debt service down. I'm sorry, my slides may be slightly out of order, and if they are, I apologize. But I'm sure you probably won't mind if I miss a slide. This is a fairly long presentation. So the financial outlook for 2016, this is how we build the water rate. You'll look at what we think 2015 is going to cost us on the left, and what we think fiscal year 16 is going to cost us on the right. So you can see that this year we had a very good year for debt service. We were able to get much lower rates than we had anticipated, so our debt service was very low. Next year we're projecting an increase in debt service. We always project based on what the Water Finance Authority tells us is a prudent thing to project for. So you probably read all the time that interest rates are about to go up. We read the same thing. The Water Finance Authority presumably has better sources than I do on this, but they tell us what they think we will probably have to pay, and we put that in. But then frequently they do better with the borrowing, so sometimes that comes down. But right now it looks like we'll be paying more for debt next year than we did this year. We also try to buy back debt, as I mentioned, but we do that as the opportunity arrives and as we have cash available to do that. So this year we did very well. We spent $800 million buying back debt, and Mathilde can tell you, although I can't off the top of my head, what that saved us. It saved us a lot in debt service. Next year we're projecting less than that, but if all goes well and rates stay low, we might actually buy back more debt. Operations and maintenance is going up, and that's very significantly to do with the opening of the Croton filtration plant, among other projects, other big pieces of infrastructure coming online. And then the rental payment, which is what we pay the city for using their infrastructure, is the net rental payment, will go up next year because it tracks the debt service, even though we're getting back a bigger percentage, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. So the net system costs, you'll see it in bold there, we anticipate for next year will be $3,850 million. We also every year are required to collect money and hold in hand 15% of the cost. And that is so that we can be sure to pay our debt service, and that keeps our interest rates low. In addition, we actually hold closer to 25%, because if there is a catastrophe, like Sandy, when we had to go in and make huge emergency repairs to our wastewater treatment plants, or like the Gilboa Dam, when we had to, on a couple weeks' notice, put out a couple $100 million worth of contracts to start making emergency repairs to that dam, we have to have cash in hand to do it. We can't go to OMB and say, give us some money out of the city budget. We don't tap the city budget. We only use our own money. So we have to have that cash in hand. It doesn't go to waste, because if we don't use it, the first thing we do the next year is use it to pay our debt service. So it helps, it pays the next year if we don't use it, a cost we have anyway, and by doing that up front, it keeps our borrowing rate very low. So we put in the cash in hand, and that gives us to a total system cost for 15-16 of $4,771. You'll see it in bold at the bottom of the column, the second column from the left. So keep a hold of that number, because you're going to see it on the next page. So you'll see in the top right-hand corner, there's that 4771 number. That is the system cost we're projecting for fiscal year 16. All right, we take away from that carryover revenue I mentioned, that $906 million from last year. That helps pay down the expense of operating next year. In addition, we get paid upstate for the water that is used. It's wholesale. We don't sell it to individual customers. We sell it to water utilities upstate. We expect that to be $225 million. So those are things that reduce the cost of operating, and we end up with a revenue need of $3,640,000. That's the yellow box on the right. Last year, our operating cost was $3,582,000. That's that ochre color you'll see in the bottom of the left-hand column. So our prior year revenue was collected just to cover that cost, the $3,582,000. We expect people to use about $56 million less worth of water this year because of energy-efficient equipment and other things that are reducing people's use of water. So if we have a lower rate of use, if we had the same water rate as 2015, the revenue we brought in would be $3,526,000. But our revenue need is $3,640,000. We have a $114 million gap. And in order to meet that $114 million gap, we need to raise the rate by 3.24%. That's how we build the rate. That's how we get to it. Just a word about the rental payment. As I said, we pay the city for the infrastructure that they built before the DEP financial structure was put in place. And we also, that payment became, at a certain point, 15% of our debt service. We have been in conversation with OMB and with the city for several years about capping or reducing the rental payment, because we would like to keep that money paying for the water system. In 2012, the city began to return a portion of the annual payment, and Mayor de Blasio added 10% to that return last year, producing a $31 million return in 2015. And now, as part of this rate, we are proposing, and the city is agreeing to, a 20% increase of the fiscal year return of the fiscal year rental payment, which will take it from $31 million to $41 million we'll be getting back, and then adding 10% a year for the years going out. I'd like to mention a couple of other parts of the rate that are included as part of this. One is the Home Water Assistance Program. We started this last year for anyone who qualifies for the HEAP program, the federally financed Heat Energy Assistance Program. We are also giving a $116 credit, which is 25% of the annual minimum charge, and that covered 12,500 single-family homes. In addition, we're expanding that now so that anyone who qualifies for the senior or disabled discount on their property tax also will get this same credit against their water bill. This will add another 46,500 households to it, so overall 59,000 households will be eligible for this rebate every year, and that's 7% of our customer base. In addition, we're freezing the minimum charge for people who use less than about 100 gallons a day. They are on a minimum charge. The minimum charge essentially pays the fixed cost of the infrastructure, which is about half the cost of the typical bill. So that is being frozen again this year, and this will be the third year in a row that we're doing that. We're also giving I have to admit, modest credit for enrolling in e-billing, a $10 credit for people who go on e-billing, which we think, and we will also offer everyone, whether they're on e-billing or not, a monthly bill if they prefer it. We get a lot of requests for monthly billing, and so we will be making that available. And we will also be offering a $100 credit for households that are willing to participate in our lead and copper monitoring program, which we're required to do by federal law. The Service Line Protection Program, which has built into the agreement an index which allows them to increase those charges from year to year, is not going to increase this year. So once again, going back to the water rate, it's a 3.24% proposed increase, which is an average of about $33 for a single-family home. I thank you for your attention, and we will be happy to try to answer your questions, and I'm happy to hear your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're now going to open up the floor to public comments. If you wish to speak and have not yet signed up, there's still an opportunity. Please do so now. I'd also like to remind everyone that we ask that everyone keep their remarks to 5 minutes. There are a lot of people that have asked to speak this evening. We want to make sure that everyone that wants to have a chance to speak has an opportunity. So please keep your comments to 5 minutes, and I will have a clock to help me do that. So our first speaker is Jenny Fishman from Public Advocate James's office.
Hi everybody, I'm Jenny Fishman. I'm representing the Public Advocate here today. First, thank you. First, I just want to thank the Water Finance Authority for providing us with safe, clean drinking water and water for our city. That being said, we're all here because of the water rate increase. It's risen 91% since 2005. This increase was added with all, oh, sure, right over here. Thank you. All right. So this increase added with all the other expenses New Yorkers have to further burden on ratepayers. The Public Advocate is supporting the mayor and the DEP, as you just heard about the Home Water Assistance Program to include thousands more of low-income, senior, and disabled households. The Public Advocate does, as her title says, she advocates for the public, so I will be here for the rest of the night to listen to all complaints and concerns and bring them back to the citywide office so that we can try and all work together. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Also, if I mispronounce your name, I do apologize, so please, please be patient. Our next speaker is Marie Carmody La Francesca from the Staten Island Borough President's Office.
Good evening. Several years ago, I compared Staten Islanders' plight to the mythological figure Sisyphus, who, as a punishment for past misdeeds, was compelled to push an enormous boulder up a hill. As it neared the top, the immense stone invariably slipped away from Sisyphus and rolled down the hill again. His action was repeated and repeated and repeated, dooming him to an eternity of endless work and infinite frustration. Does anyone see the parallels here? The fact that there will be a water rate increase has already been established. While it is true that the ultimate height might be slightly less than the 3.24% proposal, in the end the rate will rise just as the boulder was bound to fall. We are thus here at this hearing rolling a giant boulder up a hill with full knowledge that we will not succeed and the boulder will roll back down again. Perhaps the worst part of it all is that we know that we will be back again here next year at the end of April, and we will be doomed to failure then too. As a practical matter, the New York City Water Board is no different than the NTA nor the Port Authority. It is always the same. Elected officials and a few concerned residents come out to public hearings to protest, but the increases always happen anyway. We will never be able to get the boulder up and over the hill, ever. I have been attending these hearings for more than a decade, and frankly, there is nothing left to say. It has all been said. The leadership in City Hall changes, and the agency heeds to change, but the hikes always come anyway. Some years, you can count the number of people in attendance on one hand. In a good year, maybe two. Not because Staten Islanders don't care, but because they are understandably beaten down by a system that appears rigged against them. A system that never tires of taking money out of their pockets. And the argument that the hikes would have been worse is simply unacceptable. The increase this year, even if only 3%, must be looked at as another addition to the mountain of increases we've borne in the last decade. Is it any wonder that we will never get that boulder up the hill? Will it ever end? In addition, the backdoor tax continues. The issue of the rental payment has still not fully been addressed. While I understand that the city is taking some action and will return 20% of the rental payment this year, we will not be satisfied until it returns to 100% of the rental payment, which most expected with the change in the administrations. Our city is continuing to become more unaffordable for middle-class New Yorkers, and every single percentage brings us closer and closer to the brink. I therefore urge the board to reject this increase. Let's send a message to middle-class New Yorkers that the city is on their side. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jessica Proud from District Attorney Dan Donovan's office.
Hello, I apologize that Dan can't be with you directly tonight, but he did have a previous engagement and he did ask that I read this on his behalf. It is often said that Staten Island is the forgotten borough, and this latest proposal from City Hall to hike water rates even further will leave this borough in particular soaked. 70% of Staten Island residents are homeowners, and the city's ever-increasing cost of living is hitting the middle-class residents of this borough hard. Mayor de Blasio is trying to spin this as the lowest rate hike in a decade, but the real truth, as the Staten Island Advance correctly points out, is that residents are paying a whopping 254% more for water today than they did in 1995. How many people can say that their incomes went up by that much? We already endure the longest commute in America with limited public transportation options and expensive tolls, combined with increasing electric rates, money-grabbing speed cameras, and the list goes on. The hike also comes at a time when increased revenue is literally flowing into the city's coffers. For decades, the water system only charged customers what it needed to cover its costs. But now, anyone who pays a water bill is sending more and more of their money into the city's general budget. It's wrong, and it has to stop. I agree, but that is the direct quote from Bill de Blasio as the mayoral frontrunner. Now that he's elected, what has changed? Why haven't we heard from City Hall about what is being done to get costs under control before passing them down to already overburdened residents? It is important to point out the water rate increases are a regressive, hidden tax that hurts those in the lower and middle class the worst. Government at all levels needs to take a serious look at how to be more efficient instead of the knee-jerk reaction to just pass the buck to taxpayers who are begging for mercy. I joined with many of my fellow residents in imposing yet another water rate hike and urged the administration to re-examine the city's finances to find savings before asking hardworking taxpayers to pay even more money to live in what is an already too expensive city. Thank you.
Next will be David Carr from Councilmember Mattio's office.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Carr, and I'm Chief of Staff to City Councilman Stephen Mattio. I'm here today to express the opposition of the councilman and also his colleague, Minority Leader Vincent Ignazio, to the proposed water rate hike of 3.24%. While many are quick to proclaim this the lowest proposed increase in the last 10 years, it is hardly cause for celebration. It's been reported widely by folks who have spoken already tonight and also in media outlets that the water rates have skyrocketed 255% in the last 20 years. When we look at some of the other costs that government has imposed on Staten Islanders in the last 20 years, we can see why this marginal increase is not cause for celebration. Express bus service was $4 in 1995 and is $6.50 today, an over 60% increase. Port Authority tolls were $4 in 1995 and are now $6 for those who cross those bridges more than 3 times a month, or $11.75 for those who do it less than 3 times. The tolls on the MTA bridges, $3.25 for Staten Island residents in 1995, $5.50 today, and $11.08 for those who are not residents who are simply coming to visit Staten Island relatives or patronize Staten Island businesses. And then on top of it all, in the last 10 years, the state has increased the charges that you pay at the DMV to renew your licenses, to register your vehicles by 25% across the board. The average New Yorker spends $88 per month currently on their water bills. And yet we know that in Staten Island, which is one of the least densely populated boroughs, where homes tend to be larger and with larger yards, that we're going to be paying significantly more than the average. The council members' constituents are taxed more, tolled more, pay higher fees, and like all New Yorkers, face an ever more difficult to meet cost of living. Despite ballooning expenses, the fortunate among them only make marginally more than they did several years ago. As parents and homeowners, the council members will understand that every dollar counts. While it appears that Staten Islanders are accepting of this rate hike because this room isn't full to capacity, we know that if we put every Staten Islander who opposes this hike, we would fill this room many, many times over. Our residents feel that this is simply a pro forma event, where public testimony has little significance and virtually no impact on decision making. After years of public meetings on water rates and bridge tolls that ended with their views being ignored, who can blame them? The council members stand squarely with those they represent in opposing this water rate increase and respectfully request that the water board look for ways to manage their own costs further and find needed revenue through savings. Please vote no against this water rate increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Peter Junta from Assemblymember Borrelli's office. Again, I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
So I'm sorry that Assemblymember Borrelli couldn't be here tonight. He had gone to Albany today. He's up there for the rest of the week. But I have a statement from him. We're often told that these rate hikes are justified because they'll be used to pay for infrastructure improvements and other special projects. What they don't tell you is that most of these projects aren't taking place on Staten Island. Single-family homeowners should not be used to finance the maintenance and upgrades of the vast and aging city water and sewer system. I think everyone who came out to this evening's hearing, this is a serious issue, and the fact that so many of you showed up tonight proves that. Here's a suggestion to the New York City Water Board. Staten Island should benefit from what it has already paid in past taxes before any further rate increases are discussed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, Ronnie Barrett from Assemblymember Titone's office.
Thank you. It's actually Lonnie Barron. I'm the coordinator of community and legislative affairs for Assemblyman Matthew Titone, who unfortunately could not be here tonight. He's up in Albany. Listen, not more than 3 months ago, most of us get the Advance or read us in our lives. I know you all saw this. Not more than 3 months ago, the Advance ran a series of articles and an editorial asserting a hard truth of our times that particularly affects people my age. I'm 29, for those wondering. Stagnant wages are killing the middle class. That's a fact, a verifiable fact. Yet here we are at a hearing that in the minds of many of you here tonight amounts to little more than a pro forma affair, a show of open government, as the Advance has written. In recent weeks, the Advance has highlighted the steep and most likely unjustifiable water hikes under the Bloomberg administration. Though it's true that the proposed increase of 3.24% to current rates is the lowest in 10 years, it really doesn't matter when coupled with the fact that wages have stagnated over the last 20 years, while the cost of virtually everything else has skyrocketed. Since 2000, basic cost of food, basic foods rather, like meat, poultry, eggs, it's increased by nearly 69%. Property taxes have exploded to 70%, while utility, transportation, higher education, and healthcare costs have spiraled wildly out of control. This average Staten Island homeowner is paying $992 a year for water now. The proposed increase would bring the average annual cost for homeowners to the nice round number of $1,020. When placed in the context of the economic realities faced by most Staten Islanders, including myself, a reality where many are overworked and underpaid, their budgets stretched to the last penny just to keep a roof over their heads and food in the refrigerator, a rate increase of 3.24% isn't a gift, it's a slap in the face.
Yes.
Next is Linda Barron from the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening. My name is Linda Barron from the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce. We represent about 800 businesses here on Staten Island, about 20,000 employees. And I'm here today to voice our opposition to yet another increase in the water and sewer rates. I get very frustrated. I've been here after year testifying against the water increases, and I see the charts, and I know that when you look at other areas in the country that we're in the middle, but you know, over the last, since 1995, the amount of increases that we've received in such a short time period have just stifled our community. I'm really pleased to see so many here tonight. I've come to these hearings, I've seen 7 to 10 people here. So this is just to show that this is really impacting our local economy, and as everybody has stated here, there are so many costs that are out there, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing of how much everybody is paying for all the different items that they need, the cost of living. Because I represent the business community on Staten Island, and I've said this at other hearings as well, there's nothing in these charts that talk about the impact on the business community. And some of these businesses, whether they're restaurants, you know, small catering facilities, they're using a lot of water, and the amount of increase is phenomenal. And what really is difficult is it's difficult for them to raise their prices because then the consumer doesn't want to come shop there. And then if they do raise their price, if they absorb it, it's really just being passed down to the consumer. And it's time, and I know that, you know, that certain things are being looked at, and other things are mandated, and that the cost has to be, you know, acknowledged, but there's got to be a way. I mean, you're getting money now for this special line that people can take out insurance on. There's got to be a way of looking to mitigate some of these increases. It would be wonderful to come here and find out that there's no increase, that we could kind of move forward and really, like, to just survive is really what we need. We need survival, and I implore the water board to vote no on this increase. Thank you very much.
Next is Michael Morrell from the Westerly Improvement Society.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Morrell, and I'm the president of the Westerly Improvement Society. The Society is a civic association which represents over 700 residents and homeowners in the Westerly section of Staten Island. I'm testifying once again to oppose the imposition of yet another rate increase in water and sewer rates on the residents of the city. This year's proposed 3.24% increase comes after many years of continuous rate increases. While smaller than previous increases, it nonetheless represents a continuation of the ever upward surge of rate applications by the water board. As property owners, we are paying more and using far less water. Many homeowners have made a conscious effort to conserve and are still being clobbered with water and sewer charges that put a severe strain on anyone's budget. We appeal to the mayor to intervene and do what he promised before he was elected. Make the water rates cover just the cost of water without using the water board as a vehicle to raise untold millions for the city's general fund. There should be no huge cash reserves, bond purchases, and certainly no exorbitant rate hikes. Absent any change of approach to these annual water rate increase hearings, which always result in a foregone conclusion, the only remedy we have as ratepayers is to demand a political solution to the problem that would result in a more equitable water rate system. The Society therefore supports the enactment of legislation which would change the makeup of the water board to allow the appointment of one member by each of the borough presidents, in addition to the 2 members appointed by the mayor. We feel this approach would be more representative for all parts of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ed Malone, also from the Westerly Improvement Society.
Thank you very much. My name is Ed Malone. I'm a homeowner, ratepayer, and treasurer of the Westerly Improvement Society, and this will be my 10th year before the board. For those of us on a fixed income, the following comparison is meaningful when one compares increases in Social Security benefits with the rate increases. This year, 2015, Social Security recipients received a 1.7% increase, and the board is proposing a 3.24% increase. But let's go back a few years. 2008, the beginning of the recession, Social Security did get a 5.8% increase, but the board got an 11.5% increase. In 2009, Social Security recipients got nothing, and the board got 14.5%. In 2010, Social Security recipients got nothing. The board got 12.9, and in 2011, 3.6 for Social Security, 12.9 for the board. Again, as others have said, it's compounding upon compounding upon compounding, and that's why we are opposed to the increase. I would like to look at the financial outlook for fiscal 2016, which Ms. Lloyd had put up on the board. It is indicated that the total systems cost is $3.857 million. I got that figure from their website. What was up here was $3,850,000. I wish to examine two items on the pie chart that was up there. The chart shows expenses of $104 million for the Water Finance Authority and the Water Board. This constitutes, according to the chart, 3% of the total. Simple math, however, shows that 3% of the $3,800 million is not $104 million, it's $115 million. Is this Common Core math? They're doing it. The question is, what is the money used for? I believe the ratepayers should know. The minutes of the board meetings don't give us a clue. Well, then again, the board didn't meet 3 months this year already, November, December, and January. I guess it was too cold for them to go out. Unless the board is still paying for all of the no-bid contracts of the years gone by. Don't feel sorry for the board, because an audit reveals, as of June 30th, 2014, the board had cash of $95,208,398.10 and U.S. Treasury bills of $140,676,434.11, for total assets of $235,884,832.21. In addition, the quarterly audit ending 12/31/2014 shows a U.S. Treasury note of $104,014,591.01, with a maturity date of 5/15/2017. That's 2 years of not needing the $104+ million, but getting the ratepayers' money for expenses. Let's now examine what is called the rental payment, or as we all know, a tax on the ratepayers. If it talks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it's a duck. And this is a tax. Does the police department pay rent for its cars and its precinct houses? Does the fire department pay rent for its fire trucks? No, I don't think so. But we're paying, quote unquote, a rental payment. And it says on the chart that was up here, $244 million, which is 6% of the $3,850 billion. No, it's not. 6% is $231 million. Again, a math error.
You go to school.
Another math error, but then again, every percentage on that pie chart was wrong. I have a calculator if anyone wants to check. 244 million would pay for the revenue needed, the 114 million shortfall. Meaning, we wouldn't have to pay anything.
It's scary.
Okay, he's going to continue.
Court. Go ahead, sir.
Sir, I would ask that you-
Okay, well, 114 million of that 244 million would go for what was needed, and the rest would go to the city coffers. And guess what? We wouldn't get an increase. The 244 million should not go to the city coffers. It should be used to pay whatever deficit that the board has, and in addition, whatever is left over can go to the DEP for cash on hand to pay down the debt. You know, I'm going to quote Mark Twain. Good old Mark was quoting the English politician Benjamin Disraeli. Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Right.
You know what it is? It's lies, damn lies, and water board.
Again, there's a marvelous speaker who wanted to really has an opportunity to speak tonight, so again, we ask that you keep your comments within 5 minutes. The next speaker is Louise Vinsiguerra from the Westerly Improvement Society.
I am a member, but I'm not representing Westerly. This is my own.
I apologize.
Would you consider not raising our water bill?
My Microphone.
Would you consider not raising our water bill if you could save $24 million a year? That is the cost to New York City of adding fluoride to our water, according to the Freedom of Information Act. When the U.S. Public Health Service endorsed water fluoridation in 1950, there was little evidence of its safety. It began in the era of lead in our gasoline, PCBs in our transformers, DDT being sprayed in our classrooms, doctors advertising Camel cigarettes, and smoking on airplanes. Some of you are too young to remember all that. Many of these things have since been banned, but fluoride, a known toxic chemical, is still being forced upon us. Now, 6 decades later, and after most countries have rejected the practice, it is time to rethink this. When in doubt, take it out. 97% of Western European countries have stopped adding fluoride to their water. That's Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Greece, Sweden, Italy, France, Germany, and many U.S. communities are stopping fluoridation after learning the new science information. The Center for Disease Control and the American Dental Association continue to promote fluoridation, despite increasing evidence that it is not only unnecessary, but potentially hazardous to human health. Anyone can endorse a product. It doesn't mean they examine the issue. The fluoridation chemicals that go into our drinking water are not even pharmaceutical grade. Are you aware of that? But instead, it is a hazardous waste product of the phosphate fertilizer industry. It is illegal to dump this waste into the sea or local surface water. And yet it is allowed in our drinking water. To make matters worse, this program receives no oversight from the Food and Drug Administration. And the Environmental Protection Agency takes no responsibility for the practice. And from an ethical standpoint, water fluoridation is bad medical practice. Individuals are being forced to take medication without their informed consent. Doesn't that hire you? There is no control over the dose and no monitoring of possible side effects. There are countless papers and scientific data showing links between fluoride and harm to the brain, bones, and the thyroid. Evidence that fluoridation reduces tooth decay is surprisingly weak. European studies show that tooth decay does not go up when fluoridation is stopped. The World Health Organization states that there has been a decline in tooth decay even in non-fluoridated areas. Even if you don't want to believe the studies of this chemical causing thyroid disease, bone disease, lowering IQ in children, I will go on about all of that, but there's much evidence. We must realize that to medicate all people in an effort to slow tooth decay in children just doesn't make sense. If anyone wants fluoride in their case, they can add it to their own water in the form of a pill, not to the water of 9 million people. What doctor would prescribe a medication without deciding dosage to his patient? Some people drink more water than others. Low-income families may not have the financial means to avoid overdosing with their drinking water. Many of us filter our water. Low-income people can't afford that. In the words of Erin Brockovich, the Love Canal environmentalist, any of you remember her? She said, I quote, "Public drinking water is a basic human right, and its systemic use of a substance for medical purposes is deplorable. Drinking fluoridated water takes away people's freedom to choose what they take into their bodies. bodies. And we can save $24 million a year without it.
Thank you. Next is Mr. John LaFamina from Oakwood Civic Association.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and the jurors that came tonight against us. I have here a clipping of the newspaper, "City moves towards plans on muddy reservoir release." I guess that's not true. It's a false advertisement in the paper. I have articles of the advance of water filters in people's houses with all mud. Yet nobody paid attention to these articles. I purchased filters from GE, qualified to make filters for water filters. These are the filters you're drinking.
Yo,
Okay?
what color was that originally?
White. I change these filters every 3 weeks. I called DEP. They came down. They opened up the hydrant. Mud for 1 hour coming out. Fungus coming out of the hydrants.
Let them respond.
Okay? Last week we had an odor, a smell of the water. They came and they opened up the hydrant and let it trickle all night to get rid of the smell. That's the kind of water we're drinking and getting paid and have to pay raises for? I don't think it's fair.
It's not.
A lot of people, I wish just put these water filters in. Not very expensive, you can do it yourself. Okay? You put it at the main coming into the house. That's where mine are. I had a water test done by a company from GE. It failed. Okay? It failed. All these statistics we get off the computer sounds great. For them, not us. It makes them a genius and they try to make us look stupid with all their numbers. Those are all fabricated numbers, trust me. Okay? I'm against the increase. I was against the water meters. When they first came out, I was on committee board 2 land use. I said it would be another mortgage, and it came out to be. And thanks to your politicians who allowed those meters to go in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is James Thompson.
James isn't here. He's not here.
You left. Then we'll go to John, is it Nagai? Maybe the end is silent. No, okay. Ms. Rita Fairs?
I lived on Staten Island for 48 years, and as a middle-class person, we just feel like we're getting so many increases on everything. When we have a cell phone, we usually look for the cheapest one. We have many grocery stores that we can go to, ShopRite, Pathmark, Costco, BJ's. When we want to pay for electric, we have different suppliers. When we have car insurance, we shop around. But when it comes to the water department, you can't shop and save money. We're at the mercy. It's almost like water is like oil. Will we have a war for water one day, like the Middle East? We need it for bathing, for cooking, for cleaning, to survive. And it should be a right that it should not be taxed. I mean, it's not being used for baptizing. The Pope did not anoint it. It's not a secret chemical that's, it's water. and to constantly pay for it and pay for it year after year. We understand that inflation goes up, but the MTA, $2.75 to take a bus, $2.75 to take a train, $15 to go over the boroughs on the bridge. They haven't passed minimum wage. We have 20,000 people on Staten Island out of work. We have veterans that don't get increased. We have, in this paper, the Daily News, middle-class families being targeted for not paying their bills on time. By the grace of God, go on. One of you could have cancer and lose your job, or get downsized, or a divorce, or have somebody that you have to pay for a funeral that year, and you can't make the payment. So what happens is, you put our names, our lot numbers, so our bosses, our neighbors, our family, people that we know in our community can see that we're negligent in paying our bills. And then you put a lien on our house. And then even if our house is paid for, you have the right to put a lien on the house and take our property away for a couple $1,000 water bill. So there is no freedom in America. When I write the check out to you every quarter, I should write it out to the mafia. Because my electric bill doesn't increase that much. My gas bill, I can control it, but I can't control it. I need to take a bath. I need to wash my dishes. I need to clean my floors. I need to feed my pets. So when I don't get a 3% raise, I don't get it. And the only thing good about the hike is that you can take a shower with your husband.
Next will be Joseph O. Callahan.
Gotta follow that. Maybe it's fun to drop the soap.
Hey, about the right. Thanks for showing up. I want to thank JCC for hosting us. It's a beautiful, nice little venue that we have here tonight. Thank you very much. I want to talk about the two tales of Bill de Blasio. We have public advocate de Blasio. In 2013, he decried the rent payment that the city charged to the DEP for use of the water system, money that went straight to the general fund. Now, for decades, those that are old enough to remember, for decades, the water system only charged customers what it needed to cover its costs. But now, anyone who pays a water bill is spending and sending more and more of their money into the city's general budget. It's wrong, and it has to stop. These are not my words. They're de Blasio's. Now, he sat down during a meeting with the Advance editorial board during his campaign for mayor, and he vowed to eliminate the add-on portion of the city water bill that goes to the city general treasury. He said, I want water bills to only be the amount necessary to provide the water, de Blasio said at that time. Homeowners and businesses need to have the burden lightened. Now, we're going to be paying $1,000 to $1,020 per year. I'd like to see some sort of tax write-off for some of this, because it's an awesome burden. And like what you've heard here before, you've heard de Blasio, and I reiterated what he said. You've heard people here that are pensioners on Social Security, people that have very low ones. There's no such thing anymore as disposable income anymore, because in America, we don't make anything anymore. Our jobs are north and south of the borders, and the people that are left in this country, what's left of the working poor, it's getting harder and harder to sustain metropolises of 1 million people or more. Detroit was only 750,000. You see what happened to that story. Thank God we're 8 million here in the 5 boroughs, which leads me to the next thing. I want to make an observation that you have 5 hearings in each borough. Staten Island's the first one, ends in Manhattan. I take note that June 1st we're going to have, is it right to say, 1 public hearing upstate? Besides the 5 boroughs here, folks, you have another 57 counties. Are they benefiting from any of this that we're doing down here today? No response. Crickets. Okay. Now, if we have that happening and 11 days later, from the June 1st public hearing on upstate New York, the Water Board is going to adopt the fiscal year 2016 upstate rate. How's that going to be done in one day if you have 57 other counties? Now, this paper was brought out by a lady that takes showers with her husband. Thankfully not her neighbors, so we do believe in marriage. And we have paper here that says that these folks owe money.
That's right.
Now, in 2008, I attended a hearing, and I said, why am I paying so much for my water bill? Now, not these folks. The folks that were there in 2008 replied, well, you know what? Your neighbors don't pay their bills. And that was an honest answer that they said. An honest to goodness answer that was said to me. That was supposed to cover all things. 2009, I showed up and I said, excuse me, why did I get another increase? You know what they said to me? I wasn't, Phyllis, am I right? I didn't use enough water. And I said, what do you have, you skull? So they're nice people. They're just doing what they're told to be doing by being here. I think that you showed up here not hoping for any change. I hope you're not. I think that you showed up here to see what really a lesson of futility looks like. Phyllis, you got a sign. You can get that sign, Phyllis, and show people. F you. F you because it stands for no insult to you. It just merely means F you fed up. I want to thank everybody for showing up. You're doing a yoke job. You're doing a Herculean effort. I don't envy you. But the middle class needs a break. And those that are retired before me, they shouldn't even have to pay this fee.
That's right.
Thank you. Next is Phyllis O'Callaghan.
When our mayor was public advocate, he called the rental charge by the city to the DEP wrong and has to stop. Since he's been our mayor, water rates have gone up twice in the 2 years that he's been mayor. Homeowners should receive a refund on the overpayments that we are forced to make.
Mr. Richard Florentino.
Yeah, my name is Rich Florentino. In the interest of full disclosure, I worked for DEP for 15 years or so. That's right. And I worked also, I did some reports and whatnot for the Water Board. I just, as a suggestion going forward, a few less slides, and you don't have to do things like, to the last penny. Round things off a little and do a zero-based calculation. I've done them in my career for different towns. Take all the costs, how much is it a year, what do you use a year, you come up with a rate. And dollars per gallon would be much more useful than dollars per 100 cubic feet. Yeah. I don't know why that had to be the norm, but it doesn't help much. Now, that's one thing, just to make the increases more understandable. You can see where every bit of it comes in. It's okay to compare last year to this year and this city to other cities. That's comparative. Let's do what they call a zero-based calculation. Every dollar that goes in, every dollar we use, you divide one by the other, you get dollars per gallon. Could be done in a couple of slides. I've done it before. Again, not for New York City, but the numbers were small, but it's the same calculation. The other thing, though, I'm very gratified to hear that one representative of our representatives talked about a regressive tax. Now, none of this is ever going to change if we insist on doing this per household, per use, you know. To me, it's like the flip side of Social Security. People pay up to a certain amount, and then people above that amount pay nothing. Somehow that's okay. How about we do it the other way? People who make less than a certain amount pay nothing for water. And people with the real money pay for the water. Or something like that. A progressive tax. All user rates are regressive taxes. Tolls, tolls, transit, etc. You know, okay, when Bloomberg was around, we get it. He's a billionaire, he talks to his buddies, he thinks like that. We get it. Okay? He always said, oh, the more billionaires we have in this city, the better. No, the more working people we have in the city who make a decent wage, because there are not so many billionaires, maybe then we'll have that tale of two cities taken care of. And the representative that mentioned that was from Dan Donovan, quite astoundingly. Not that I would hold my breath that he would follow up on that. But there is plenty of money around. We don't have it.
Thank you. Mr. Jose Valentin.
Just for the record, you know, I've been coming around here at least 25 years. I think this is one of the biggest meetings we had so far. And I say a meeting because that's all it's going to come up to. Nothing in the South here. So if you came here for results, like he said before, Joe, you're not going to get that. You're just going to get a nod and goodbye, and that's it. And we're going to go back to the other side. Point here is, I noticed a few points here. First of all, we got a lot of numbers up there. I don't think, what do you call an accountant would be sitting here trying to figure out what the hell they had here in numbers. The other thing is too, most of us, and I think, well, the size of the crowd here is pretty senior citizens. We have a habit, or we were taught, if you don't have it, you don't spend it. Okay? These people, it's just like the Port Authority. They do the same damn thing. They come up with all these programs and all these things, what goodies are we going to do? Hey, we're going to put this here, we're going to do that there. Never thinking or planning how much this damn thing is going to cost and where the hell is it going to come from? Why not? New Yorkers are stupid. They pick their pockets. We got plenty of money there. Not thinking also, like the gentleman said about the Social Security. You got a lousy 2% sometimes. Sometimes I think one of those nights was, I think 9.7, 9.8 that we have Social Security. That doesn't go up. You have a pension. Pension doesn't move. You got one number and that's it. You die with that number. That's right. They don't care. They don't care. That was a dumb. I don't want it anyway. So, but the thing here is that this is on every year, and they come up, and every year they give you another little picture of how it's going to look, who's going to get it. You know what? Again, I'm going to bring out, I don't give a damn about the rest of the goddamn city or the rest of upstate. I don't give a damn. All I care is about Staten Island. That's where I live. And that's the way we should think. Like somebody said, we do not get half of this money in use. We pay it, but we never do. Same thing with the tolls. We pay the goddamn tolls, we get nothing out of the goddamn tolls. MTA, the Port Authority, everybody else get paid. The mayor, the governors all get the little cuts. And that's all money that is not accountable. You don't know what the hell happened to it. Down millions and millions of dollars. This is what goes with these goddamn agencies too. It's a corrupted goddamn world. Corrupted. These people don't know anything else, and they come out and give you a nice little picture, and they show you nice little numbers, and they want you to believe that they're doing you a favor. Nobody does me no favor. Nobody gives me no damn. Everything I have, I earned how to work the old-fashioned way. Work up. There's a lot of loafers in this goddamn state, especially in New York City. You got half of Manhattan, half of goddamn Brooklyn, Queens. All these loafers, they're all on welfare. Who the hell knows what else they're coming? You got over 30 million in this country. They come here. Who's paying for this? We the ones that pay for it. Nobody else is paying for it. So, you know, they don't think of, they think $3.24 is nothing. I don't want a penny out of my pocket or any of this. And I hope that you all feel the same way. But the point is that sometimes we get so disgusted and so that we don't attend these meetings. We have to attend. I get frustrated. I'm one of the Port Authority fighters. I'm the guy that has that sign that says, boycott the Port Authority. And it's a way of boycotting, and that's what I've been doing for the past 8 years since I have it, okay? But the point here is, there's ways of doing things, and if we all did a little bit of this, some of these agencies, we should go and protest right in the goddamn places where they come out of. The office, right? And make it a point that we are, just like, you got all these people rallying against the police department. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. Just because they're Puerto Rican and blacks. What the hell is wrong with the rest of the goddamn country? It's other nationalities here besides black and Puerto Ricans or Mexicans or whatever the hell they are. Okay? The point here is disgrace. I don't give a damn what anybody says, and I don't give a damn about colors or races. I go by the individual. If you treat me right, that's how I treat you. And if you're an a-hole, then I'm gonna call you an a-hole. But the point here is that sometimes in this country, we take too much things for granted. And unfortunately, our officials don't do enough for us. They say they do, they don't do enough for us. What the hell are we getting here? All 30 years I'm watching these bridges go up. I started here when it was $1.50. Right now it's 16. In 22, it's going to go to $20. Sir, think about it, people.
Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, I'm against this race, trying not to get that wastewater.
Why doesn't the board respond to any of these comments? You're just sitting up there. Respond to some of these issues.
That's why I'm wasting my time.
You're just sitting there. We know this is a scam, but you can at least respond.
The next speaker will be Chris Copa.
Hi, I'm Chris Copa. I've been living on Staten Island for... Hi, I'm Chris Copa. I've been living here on Staten Island for 29 years. Actually, what this woman earlier said about fluoridation is true. And it's actually in the water purification system business. And it's all poison, and it's not necessary, especially here in the U.S., where we have access to dentists and toothbrushes. So it's not really necessary. I would like to have it removed. Second of all, we pay, several years back, they decided they were going to go put water meters in everybody's house, and supposedly it would save you money because conserving water and everything else. Well, guess what? They charge you anyway, and we had to pay for those water meters. And that's a cost of doing business for them. And so we're paying for it with these increases. Second of all, if you are conserving water and you don't have a pool and you don't use much water, you pay just as much as if you had. Because I went down to the board and they said, well, I said, why is my bill so high? I hardly use it. I live by myself. They said, well, there's a minimum and you have to go by the size of your property and everything else. Even though, he said, well, gee, you could use a pool and you would be paying the same amount. That's not fair. Okay? Second of all, actually maybe third of all, but maybe you should not only charge the homeowners, but maybe charge renters as well, like in other cities. So this way, it's not all borne by the homeowners, because a tenant doesn't care how much water he uses because he's not paying for it. So think about that.
I'm not thinking about any.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ellen Bainey. Thank you. Mr. Robert Zahn.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Bobby Zahn. I'm with the Red Borough. We're a grassroots organization. And I want to shift gears a little bit. I was going to talk about some stuff, but Jessica Crowd kind of beat me to the punch on a lot of it. So I just want to shift gears a little bit and really not blast these guys so much, and don't hold that against me until you hear what I'm going to say. So, like everybody else, I'm upset that the water rates are up 254%. 254% in 20 years. But I want to talk a little bit about why. When they gave their presentation, they talked about the O&M budget, and then they talked about some debt service, and then this rental payment, which really bugs me. But anyway, the O&M, which is the operation and maintenance, was less than 50% of their budget. That means all the money that they spend to bring water to your house and take it away from your house is probably about 40 or 45%. Maybe my friend over there with the calculator, maybe he can help me out a little bit. But, you know, but quick math in my head, it was about 40 or 45%. So that means that 50, 55, 60% is coming from these mandates that they talked about. And one thing that they didn't mention about it is they didn't mention that they're unfunded mandates. So I think part of the problem is we come here and we expect that they're going to do something, and truth be told, maybe they can't do something about a big part of your water bill. So what is an unfunded mandate? It's when the government tells us that, you know, you will have this whether you want it, need it, or want to pay for it. So now we have to pay, 60% of our water bill is going to these unfunded mandates. So they talk about these mandates and they say, well, they're for infrastructure. Infrastructure is great, right? We all know it's falling apart. But the thing is, the infrastructure that they're spending the real money on isn't to make the system better for you, me, our kids, our grandkids in the future. They're making it so that the drinking water is of a better quality. Well, I'm 49 years old and I've lived in New York my whole life. We have the best drinking water in the world. So why are we spending all this money? Billions and billions, I think $16 billion, I think they showed at half of that pie chart for unfunded mandates. Why are we spending all that money on improving the quality of the best water in the world? I don't know.
It sounds good.
Because it sounds good, that's exactly right. It sounds good. And some of it is probably not these people's fault. So just, you know, just keep that in mind. And I'm not sticking up, so don't beat me up later. All right. But anyway, then we go to this rent, right? Well, think about this rent, right? You're a taxpayer, and you pay taxes for the public property in the city. So now the city charges the water board rent, who passes it off to you and brings it back to the general fund. As the gentleman over there said, if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it's a tax. I mean, there's no way that's not a tax. And I can't believe I'm going to agree with my friend Richard Florentino over here, but it's a regressive tax. At the end of the day, if a guy makes 10 times my salary, he doesn't drink 10 times as much water. So I'm paying a bigger chunk of that than, you know, than somebody who makes more. So it is definitely a regressive tax. It hits poor people, it hits middle class people, and it hits people on fixed income, senior citizens. It's absolutely unacceptable. So what can we do about this? I think people have to know what the scam is. People have to really know about these rental payments and about these unfunded mandates and really what's behind them. I think that we have to call out the people who are really responsible for this. Who is responsible for this? It's the federal government, the EPA. They talked about it before. A lot of this stuff was mandated by the EPA. So we have a race for Congress going on right now, and I see a lot of questions. Tom Robleski asks a lot of questions of the candidates, the Advance does, but nobody's asked where they stand on these unfunded mandates. Maybe we need to know from the two people who are running where they stand. Maybe we need to know from Schumer and Gillibrand, our senators, where do they stand on these unfunded mandates? And the city government, they're no angels in this. We had somebody from a city council, somebody repping a city councilman before, talked about, oh, how bad it is. But yet every year, when that budget comes, that city councilman votes for that budget and allows that money to go. So, it's great to come here and say, rah, 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 I'm with you, but at the end of the day, when you get to the city council, if you voted for that, and remember, this is $200 million out of a $75 billion budget. Billion with a B. They can't find $200 million to cut somewhere. I mean, really, there's got to be something that they could cut. So anyway, I'm gonna finish up here, and all I want to say is that the Red Borough, we're tired of this, just like the rest of you guys, you're tired of this. I think it's time to organize people and organize them with facts. I think it's time to say enough is enough. This increase, it's absolutely too late. Because again, these aren't really the right people, these aren't the right trees to be barking up. But the next one, watch out, because the next one, we're gonna come prepared and we're gonna talk to the right people before. And I really implore you guys, get involved in this. Get involved in it now for next year. Let's talk to the politicians. Let's find out where our federal legislators are on this, because that's where the real money's going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Roy Moskowitz.
Testing. The DEP is the only for-profit, non-profit, or government entity in the world that accepts MasterCard, but does not accept Visa. Now, New York banks are either MasterCard or Visa shops. Most of the popular New York City banks, such as Chase and TD, are Visa shops. Citi is the only major New York City bank that issues MasterCard rather than Visa products. Not being able to use the Visa credit and debit cards issued by their banks to pay their water bills severely inconveniences the majority of New Yorkers who are not Citibank customers. When I've inquired about why they don't accept Visa, the executive director, Steve Lawrence, and treasurer, I always butcher her last name, her first name rather, I apologize, Mathilda McQueen, both told me that Visa takes a cut of non-Visa transactions or forces them to use Visa for non-Visa transactions. Now, I've asked several people affiliated with the credit card payment industry, and no one has ever heard of anything like this. And then, if that was the case, then why aren't more organizations not using Visa? Also, please note that Ms. McQueen, the treasurer, is a former Citibank employee, and a couple of years ago, the DEP hired Citibank to handle all their payment processing. Maybe that's the reason why you're not accepting Visa? And by the way, the processing charges. I pay more in credit card processing charges if I pay 4 times a year than the actual increases right now. I wonder if that has to do with money coming from Citibank. I'm wondering if there's some kickbacks there related to the whole revolving door with Citicorp and the water board. And I never really get a straight answer from this. And I would like maybe, and I would like maybe I'm sorry, Emily Lloyd to maybe address this, since she wasn't there when these policies were originally made.
I'm familiar with the issue, but I don't think I can explain it to you right now, but I would be glad to write back to you and give you the explanation.
So, as we've said the last 2 years, if we accept Visa, then Visa's agreement requires that we would have to charge a service fee to our customers, our 64,000 customers who currently pay their bills by directly debiting their checking account. Those 64,000 customers pay us $55 million a year, and each of them would have to be charged on average $77 a year in service fees from Visa that they don't currently pay.
If that is the case, then how come how come all other city agencies accept Visa?
Because we are classified as a utility and they are not.
How come Con Ed as a utility, they accept it?
Because they do not increase, they do not, they charge the same amount to everyone to pay via other means, and we do not want to increase our rate to earn another $14.4 million a year in order to pay the convenience charges on the ACH fees. And that is what unfortunately we would have to do. And it would be us, it would be all the ratepayers paying for the convenience fees on the credit cards rather than just those who choose to use credit cards. So right now it is optional for only those who choose to use credit cards, whether you are going to pay the convenience fee or not. Everyone else's rate is $14.4 million less because it is an option.
And as information to just address a point you made earlier, sir, City University does not accept Visa for tuition payments.
And they accept other cards?
Yes. I know that as a City University parent.
But you're talking about convenience fees. Again, the convenience fees are exorbitant. I mean, by using Citibank as your financial service processor, I mean, I'm paying $9 per transaction.
They are actually less than they were with Bank of New York. Bank of New York, they were 2.49%. And when you go to pay through the Department of Finance, they're 2.45%. So they actually are less than they used to be at the Department of Finance.
Thank you. The next speaker is Yolanda Morio.
How do I follow such good speakers? I'm a senior citizen living on a fixed income. I feel like I'm choking and can't get my head above water, pardon the pun. You raise the tolls, fares, now you're thinking of putting a fee on shopping bags. To top it off, you want to raise the water bills. This is outrageous. I can look forward to ground lawn because the water bills will consume me. Let me ask you, Mr. Mayor and Mayor appointees of the water board, give us a break. I also hope that we didn't have too much trouble driving on Staten Island because our roads are so bad, filled with potholes everywhere. It seems that we can't get enough help to fix them. Please don't raise our water taxes, as I really enjoy taking showers. It helps my aching bones, and I'm so tired of being nickel and dimed. Thank you.
Next is Stephen Puglisi.
Yes, thank you. Okay, good evening, everybody. I came here unexpectedly. I don't have a prepared statement, but I would like to make a little bit of a statement. The MTA, they don't raise their fares. National Grid, they don't raise their rates. Con Edison does not raise their rates. But it seems the New York City Water Board raises their rates. And as I look at these charts, the conclusion to me is inescapable that this is going to be an annual increase from now until as long as I'm alive or beyond that. That's what's going to happen here. And you know, you can look at these grim faces, the rest of the gallery. And in a humorous fashion, as I was leaving my house, my wife said, well, you're going there, you know, what's the point? So I said, well, if I get a chance to speak, what would you like me to say? Tell anybody, or tell the water board. And maybe it's facetious, but she said, tell them we're all being waterboarded.
Ms. Lillian Hazet. Miss Allison Galdorsi. Galdorsi. Sorry.
Hello, Allison Galdorsi. I'm a member of the Newport Beach Civic Association. As everyone has already attested to, you're squeezing out the middle class. Water is a right, not a privilege. So any extra money that goes towards the New York City Water Board should not be going towards the New York City General Fund, since it is a right and not a privilege. It's not an extra, not an add-on. We all know that. In times of energy conservation, we try to use less water, and then our rates went up. So you use less, but we're paying more, as someone else had previously said. And with this minimum charge, when you use zero, we should not have to pay $116 when we don't use any water. Because as someone who comes from Newport Beach, one of our East Shore neighborhoods who were devastated by Hurricane Sandy, I am still not back home yet. And I am paying $116 a quarter. I have used zero water in my house. I have not used the bathroom there because I don't live there.
Why is she paying?
And still, I am flushing my money away to the New York City Water Board without using it. As are many, many of my neighbors who are still not home yet, but we still have to pay water taxes.
I'm curious about it.
Why is she paying? Tell us.
Can somebody answer that?
Somebody tell us, why is she paying?
Maybe you have to ask that. I don't use water in my house.
Can anyone answer that?
Yeah, answer.
Is there anything you could do for the Sandy survivors who are no longer home, or anyone who's no longer home
Retroactive, 2010 on.
and has used zero?
Don't you know the difference between right
Did you
and
receive
wrong?
a $250 credit last year, which we gave to how many thousand?
Yeah, propaganda.
$750 credit.
Yes, for those of the people who were signed up to Build It Back. But the other people who did not sign up or dropped out of Build It Back, they still have to pay their water bills, even though they were out of their houses. So those that did not sign up with Build It Back, they're still forced to pay.
Well, no, that's not true. Everyone whose house was listed as either red or yellow got a $750 credit.
Which was the equivalent of a minimum charge. So if you had not actually been in your home, and you had not been using water, and you were a red or a yellow property, you received your credit.
Yes, but I'm not expected to be back home for another year and a half. This credit will disappear by then anyway. As with other homeowners who are still not back, and whose houses were demolished and are still paying taxes and receiving water bills. How about zero water bill for zero usage?
If you would like to terminate service to your property, you could terminate service to your property and not receive more bills.
How much does it cost to put service back on?
Well, whatever plumber would charge you, you could hire a plumber to come out and shut service to your property.
How much would it cost the DEP to turn it on and off?
Thank you. At this time, that's the list that we have of people that have signed up to speak. Is there anyone in the audience that has not had an opportunity to speak that would like to do so?
Yeah, I would like to.
Sir, please.
I'm sitting back here and I'm boiling mad. This is a whole scam. First First of all, I don't agree with this podium. I want to talk to you. Not facing them. My name is Mike. I don't want to give you any more information because I don't trust the water board, all right?
We get transcribed, just let me finish. I understand you're upset. We get a transcription of everything that's said at all the meeting so that we can reconsider everything that was said to us tonight. Listen, let me finish. So that's why we need you to speak into the mic to ensure that.
I want to look at you. I want you to tell me how I'm going to speak. You're taking my money, and I'm not going to do what you want me to do. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I'm looking at you, and I'm telling you that people don't pay their bills, and I've read that they don't pay their bills, and I pay my bills, and you're not going after them. You're getting a fraction of the money that those people owe, and that's why you're raising the rates. That's one of the reasons. And the only other thing I got to say to you is think about this. Character, the definition for character is to do the right thing when nobody is watching. Think about it.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak before the water board? Yes, ma'am. Would you please identify yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Georgiana Neller. I'm the Vice President of the Staten Island chapter of Parents Without Partners. And as I would like to speak for the people who are struggling to raise their families in this borough, I would also like to speak for myself. I want to say that I've come to hearings for quite some time, and that's all this is. It's a hearing, and it's just a place where the board is obligated to come and hear everybody vent, which is what we all do. And we all know this too, is that there isn't such a big turnout for these sort of things anymore, because I think that people are frustrated, discouraged, and disgusted because they know that the increase is going to be imposed. It's just going to happen. And it doesn't matter, what everybody says. There's a record of it, but the decision ultimately always is that the increase is imposed. I would like to say that the PowerPoint presentation was really impressive. The graphs, the percentages, the money, but the bottom line, I'm just one of many who feel that, why do we have to be concerned about you not managing your budget? We are concerned about managing our budgets. And as so many people have said, it's becoming harder and harder to just survive. The cost of living does go up. The cost of living goes up all the time, and the income doesn't increase. And, we're just being, this is just happening all the time, everywhere, and there doesn't seem to be a solution. I mean, this is supposed to be a government buying for the people, but that's not really what it is, because it doesn't matter who we talk to, what politicians we talk to, great, the public advocates, everybody's office turned out, everybody sends a speaker, but they're all working for the government, the board's working for the government, you're getting paid by the bosses, and they're here and they're just doing their job, and they're gonna do what they're told to do, and everything is gonna be imposed. It's not a government buying for the people anymore. We're just being taken advantage of, and I tell you, it's kind of like a time for a revolution, or we have to put together a petition, or we have to show the people to make changes in the government and how it affects us. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you.
My name is Bruce DeSella from Great Kills. In 2008, I think it was, I had a problem with my water. In the wintertime, the hose in my backyard broke, and the spigot was letting the water go out. It must have been going on for about, I'd say, 2 or 3 weeks before I discovered it. And then I got one of these graph bills. Each month shows you how high the rate of water that you use. And I knew it was going to be a little bit high because I didn't really know how long the water was running until I discovered it. But the bill turned out to be like $700 for that month. And usually in the wintertime, my bills are lower than in the summertime. So I called the water bill, the phone number that they had on there, and I explained to them what happened. And it was very frustrating because they said, oh yeah, well, write us a letter, and I did. And then they sent me a letter back saying, you know, too bad, you're gonna pay that bill. And I mean, I was thinking to myself, I mean, it was obvious that I didn't really use that water intentionally, and it was a mistake that I did by not shutting off the water inside the house. But that was a lot of money, I think, for one person to have to pay. And just get a response like, that's too bad, that's not covered, if it was a different kind of situation where a pipe inside the house broke or something. I mean, it was just logical that I didn't purposely use this water. So I said to the person, I got somebody on the phone, and I said, well, what about all the water that's wasted every year when people put on fire hydrants in the summertime, and the police just ride by and don't shut it off? Who pays for that water? And the guy didn't really answer. So the point of what I'm trying to say is, there's like no responsible humanist thinking behind what goes on. I mean, I think there should have been some kind of forgiveness or something, or lowering of the bill or something, don't you think?
I think that exactly situations like this are the reason that the leak detection program was created, so that someone can get alerted right away, because now with the meter, with AMR, we can see that's happening and let someone know.
That was in existence at the time, and the response that I got from the people at the other end of the phone and the letters that I wrote. I mean, anyway, we're all frustrated. And government really isn't working for us. So I think that you really should get in touch with Bobby Joan and work with him.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that has not spoken yet that would like to? Sir? Sir, there are people that haven't spoken yet.
I only have one question to ask.
Microphone.
My name is Andy Musillo. I have one question to ask. There's 8 members on this board. Do any of you get to vote on what's going to happen with this increase?
So we all act, so a couple things. One, the members of the water board are all private citizens who volunteer their time to be here to listen to the public. I think a number of the members on the water board are also ratepayers, so we also share the frustration of what it costs to live in the city.
That's how it is.
Well, but those were comments that were raised along the course of the evening. And to the last point, we all do hear what you shared with us. We're given transcripts, which we, again, are given an opportunity to review, and then we all do vote.
Just you people. Are there any other people involved? Are the 8 of you going to each borough?
Yes, we all vote.
And nobody else is going?
Would you?
I'm just saying, you're on this board right now. Are you going to the other 4 boroughs?
We do.
Just what's here on the dais?
Yes. And our chair.
Okay, but to get the final vote on this increase, it's you people.
You know, is there additional new people on the voting?
The water board, we all vote, yeah.
Well, how many people? What are they in you?
There are currently 6 people on the water board.
And then
I do not vote.
3 staff.
There's staff.
Right. So,
So there's other members that are on the water board that aren't here today?
Just one.
Just one, we're missing one this evening.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone that has not yet spoken? Yes, sir. Would you like to come up to the microphone, please?
Hi, my name is Doug Wallman. This is a somewhat related question.
Microphone. Talking to the microphone.
In these handouts, one of them is a graphic showing
Speak into the microphone, please. There we go.
in the past, I know, you have given away rain barrels. Last year, you didn't because I called in. Are you going to be giving away rain barrels this year? And if so, how are we going to do it?
So yes, the agency does do rain barrel events. We coordinate them through your local elected officials. I know we have several scheduled in Staten Island over the next several weeks and months. Mayor Bernikow, who is the Assistant Commissioner for Intergov for the agency, can tell you when the Staten Island ones are. And if there isn't one scheduled, we encourage you to reach out to your elected official to ask them to schedule one.
Yeah, that's only for a single family. That's right, it's a 600
family house.
Anyone can go to a rain barrel event and get a rain barrel.
No, the last time it was only for a one-family house. That was it. If you were a two-family house and you wanted a rain barrel, you couldn't get it.
Sir, we set up the events with the elected officials and are happy.
I'm telling you what happened last time.
I appreciate that.
Can we do this a little more often in Staten Island? Because I think people do not know about that.
So,
The thing is, it's not out there. I didn't know about it.
those of you interested in rain barrel events,
So you know that. Okay.
those of you interested in rain barrel events can please see Mario. He can give you all the information about it. Thank you. Anyone else that has not yet spoken? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure I can speak loud enough, and I doubt I can reach the mic. Okay, so since the gentlelady from DE numbers, which were charted, nowhere agree the gentleman from the Westerly Associations, I would like to know how I can get a copy of your charting and a gentleman's copy of his charting, just to see how those numbers agree or don't agree.
It's online.
It's
their website.
Online. It's online, on our website. Yeah. I can assure you we'll be going back and checking the numbers.
Have you corrected?
Your numbers against these numbers.
Ma'am, it is on this website at the back of this program right here. If you go to NYC Water Board. It's actually there right on the right hand. Right on the right.
Did you correct the page where you had minuses instead of pluses?
That was somebody's idea that they were going to be good and bad. It's been corrected, yes, sir.
Online,
It was a different theory of the way to
It
look at
hasn't
the
been
numbers.
corrected online as of today.
Thank you.
We will check that. Is there anyone else that has not yet spoken? Is anyone else that has not yet spoken?
Can people write comments?
Yes. Thank you. So, is woman in the back has not yet spoken? Please, ma'am.
No, I just have a question. If I go away for 3 months, why do I get a minimum bill? If I don't use water, and I have the house for 3 months, why do I have to pay for water?
Your question is if you go away for 3 months.
If she goes away for 3 months, why does she get a minimum bill and have to pay for water?
Because the minimum bill covers the cost of the fixed cost of maintaining the system. And then, so that's why you have to turn off your water if you want no bill. If I turn off the water, I still get a minimum bill. I have a water meter, it's not registering. It's because the minimum bill covers the fixed cost of the system. The debt service we talked about, for example, is the cost of the basic infrastructure.
So at this point, if there's anyone that would like to submit comments in writing, or anyone that has already spoken tonight that would like to submit additional comments, written remarks can be submitted to the New York City Water Board by mail. The address is 5917 Junction Boulevard, the 8th floor in Flushing, New York. Or you can submit them by email at New York City Water Board, NYC Water Board at dep.nyc.gov. And as a reminder, please submit your comments no later than 5 p.m. Friday, May 1st. Since there's no additional business, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.